Howdy, hi. I hope that you're doing well. That you feel like your dreams are coming true. That you are taking your own advice. Maybe that's a good one. That you're remaining disciplined. That you're fulfilling your own goals. You know. Hold on. I feel the same way. Okay. And I hope always, for others, the same things that I hope for myself as much as possible. Unless there's a specific energy that shows up that's like, feels like I need to address it differently somehow. Okay, the energy that I am receiving right now. I guess it's probably just something that's moving through the planets or something currently, but it's this sense of there's like a lot of betrayals going on. There's a lot of like manipulation. There's a lot of exposure. There's a lot of he said, she said type energy, but like ultimately like the truth is kind of just standing on its own in the way where like these things are being brought to the surface. But then like even if they're actively trying to be denied, they really can't be denied any longer. Like maybe in the past they've always been able to kind of be hidden, suppressed, manipulated some sort of way, received some sort of other way, but like the truth is finally being exposed in different areas, whether it be like in relationships or in certain dynamics or in like structures, systems sort of deal, where things are kind of just coming to light. So this could be, down to something very personal, and maybe it's something that you've been finding in yourself, in your own personal relationships, but it's also talking about like a grander scale. I mean, this is happening on a grander scale for sure. Okay, so right now what I'm getting is like, so we have the personal that came out face down, and we have the grander scale. So on the grander scale, we have head, dream, in the reverse. Okay. What did I say? Grander scale? On the personal scale? Like this is like the grandest scheme? Well, I'm getting a couple different things. Not the first thing that I'm getting, but the strongest thing that I'm getting is this idea. My brother had written a song one time where in it he had said, you'd have to be asleep to believe. That's why they call it the American dream. And so there's this sort of idea of a pipe dream, essentially, having some sort of like ideal, some sort of goal, some sort of standard, some sort of dream, aspiration, whatever, that, is not it was coming from a less than aware aspect of oneself, and one is becoming more aware now in order to be able to address these things. There was some sort of transition that happened, some sort of change. There's a butterfly in this poem. But it's almost like transitioning out of that dream state. Like in the upwards position, it would be like encouraging one to pursue one's dreams, but in the reverse, it's kind of like waking up from this sort of fantasy and being able to find the balance between the two. I tend to be an extremely idealistic person and also an extremely like imaginative type person. I'm very hopeful, I'm very ambitious. Like, yes, I fail consistently according to those standards, but that still to me is like, I mean, I still like falling back that way, but it's almost like not falling back onto that. If I were to take it personally, it'd almost be like a reminder to fall back onto that, because it's stating that in the current I'm not. In the current, what I'm personally doing, and what the personal energy transference is Apollo in the reverse. Apollo is a messenger, but it's also like a warrior and like a prince type energy. He has a harp. He has the sun behind him. He's on a white horse in the reverse. You know, it's kind of that idea. It was interesting. Like, there was a random clip that showed up on my social media feed. I don't even know which one, the other day, of what's her name? Nicole Smith. And she's like, well, I'm still waiting for my, prince on a white horse to come in and, take me away and be able to have this, like, fantasy life where somebody loves me and cares for me. Like, it was a sad clip because, like, it's in the midst, in the wake of her life. But it's interesting for that same idea because, like, there was a time not too long ago and most of my life that I deeply resonated with those sentiments, and I worked extremely hard to remove that toxic attachment within me to be codependent on such things, and to look at it in some sort of retrospect. I had this empathy for it, but I also had this deep understanding, but it was also like such an interesting reflection in that way of how I woke up to, I stopped looking for a savior. I stopped waiting on this perfect ideal. I love to love. I very much would love to be able to have one partner, but I don't make demands of the universe as much as I receive the most that I can, the best that I can, from the universe. So, like, the way that I tend to be used, it's not the way that I would intend to use myself, but it ends up, don't start with me, but it ends up being so much bigger than anything that I could actually consider, so it's the sense of, like, realizing that one's fantasies, ideals, the dreams, perchance, or whatever goals, standards, whatever it is that would resonate as head dream, that sort of crown energy, maybe whatever somebody was manifesting, whatever sort of transition, like I said, somebody went through. It's kind of like coming up out of that and realizing that, like, you don't need the things that you assumed that you needed before, or like these things that you had dreamed of, that you had, like, longed for, that you had really made all of these different changes, even in transitions for, it brought you to a point of being like, that's not what I'm waiting on, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm assuming stepping into it yourself, because that's really, I mean, for me, always the energy that it comes back to is the capacity to be able to be self-sustainable. Ultimately, it becomes a gift that you're able to offer others as well, because instead of needing them, you can choose just to want them and enjoy them and love them and care for them and appreciate them. And it isn't coming from a space of, well, I wouldn't be able to do this without you. Because we're, you know, there was a time and space, and perhaps in people's lives and relationships, there still is that. But, buddy, yeah. For the most part, you know, we've come to a point where, like, it's important to be self-sustaining, but mostly just because the level of codependency that we've reached has become almost innately toxic, just because of how inbred a lot of unsustainable mindsets, theologies, belief systems, those types of things have been inherited through us, you know. You know, it's that much harder to be self-aware when the people that raised you weren't themselves self-aware, you know. At the same time, it's always what you make of it, because for so many people that I know, and some of my absolute favorite people, regardless of a relationship, or lack thereof, or whatever, you know, you can take the things that you've been given and that, you know, you've received in life and make something different of them and make something better of them, something that suits you, you know, and that allows you the capacity to be able to live your greatest life. I think that is the greatest thing any of us could do, and I honor anyone who's doing that, whether they're doing it in a, you know, way that I agree with or not. It's not really about me, and I'm aware that it's bigger than me. At the same time, that I've struggled in that in order to be able to find this true personalization in my actual preferences, for the fact that I've always been so willing to recognize what it is that others need from me, to the degree of almost essentially, yes, being quite unwilling to recognize what it is that I need from others, because I can fulfill that for myself, right? My end goal would be to hope that most individuals are seeking to fulfill those things for themselves while being willing to give to others. And if that's the ideal and that's the end goal and that's what I'm exampling, then hopefully, you know, that's what would happen and come from it. But, you know, and I do believe that, but like, I don't think there's anything wrong with necessarily, like, you can't just example it. You kind of have to, I think it's fine to set different standards and boundaries against people doing the exact opposite. So that's a little bit of a side note, but we're talking about being able to kind of come into one's own and, like, to really truly know oneself. And I'm super distracted by this cat. Mount of Venus and Jupiter. Okay. I'm gonna touch your stomach. Oh yeah. That's the good stuff. Well, come on, bud. Okay. Listen, I love it. You don't need to be doing that right here. Sorry. If you hit me in the face, we're gonna have a problem. This dick. He's poking me. He's like essentially pinching me with his claws. Stop it. So, yeah, that's nice. This is what I like. I mean, that's fine. I don't know why you insisted on being that way. Yeah. Okay. His nails. Naboo. Ow. Quit. Quit. Quit that. Stop. The Mount of Venus and Jupiter. So the first thing that I noticed when I put these cards together is that there's these two flowers at the bottom that kind of line up together. And so it gives this impression, and even just the fact that it's Venus and Jupiter, it gives this impression that it's like the feminine and the masculine that way. And like now, even now as I'm looking at it, I'm noticing that like the leaves kind of line up, the tree line kind of lines up, the mountains kind of line up. The skies are a little bit different, but, sorry, he's on my arm, so I don't know, but you can see that everything kind of lines up, which is pretty cool. So we have water and air. We have a rabbit and an eagle. Why are you doing this? There is the moon and lightning bolts. She has flowers and antlers on her head. He has olive branches. You know, it's kind of giving me, and I had a reading way back whenever I first started doing this, that was talking about, and I would have to, I'll have to go through and see if I can find it, I'll try to put it down in the description, but I was talking about how, this cat, I was talking about how often, and this has kind of been, yeah, I guess an ongoing topic, but there's certain, like, steps, processes, and, like, even, like, tools, structures, people, places, things, ideas, that are momentary. And that doesn't take away from their inherent value in our lives. They need to be momentary. They're part of the process that way. And there's things that we will use to process, to cope, to learn from, that will not ultimately be part of our final experience or part of our final person. You know, it's hard to let a lot of those things go. Generally, the way that the universe works is that it makes an allowance for us to let those things go on our own. It gives us gentle nudges. We're quite aware of those things, although we may be in complete denial and tend to be, you know, the more unaware of ourselves we are, the more in denial we tend to be of these things because of how difficult it is to let them go. And there's for whatever reason, this idea that we're in control, and that if we just hold on to these things, cling to these things, if we identify ourselves by these things, if we identify others by these things, if we, sell our whole lives and souls for these things, that it'll like make them last, or it'll like make us like have some sort of control over them, or it'll make us somehow feel more valuable, and like ultimately like we're really not in control of any of that. And the best that we have is to make the most of the things that we have at any given time, to make the very most. Let our imaginations run wild with what that means, and then create these disciplined structures that support us to be able to reach those goals by all means. I mean, that's ultimately the end goal, but it's a humbling and a empowering. And that's this concept that I've continued to talk about over time, and I was actually just talking about it with my roommate recently, where I had come up with this concept back in like 2015 or so. I believe it's 2015, the whole year that I was in Baltimore. So the idea was that like the way that our eyes work, right, is that we aren't looking at things. We're not just looking out at things and like seeing things by looking out. We're not even just seeing things by looking out and receiving things back. Like, that's not what's happening. That's not what happens. What's actually happening is that light is being projected at us, and it's being received through the convex surface of our sclera, of our like the round of our eyes, and it passes through our pupils, which are a hole, back into our retinas, where the cones and shit are, right? Whatever they're called. I forget whatever the other parts are called. And those sensors shoot to the brain. The brain processes, shoots it back down to the other sensors. The other sensors project from the concaveness of the inside of the eyeball and back where the retina, or back where the all of these cones and everything are, which is through the retina, I suppose, projects what is being received onto the interior, onto, I suppose, the retina, almost like a screen that way, and then receives it as what's being seen. That's projecting it outwards that way. And so, like, depending on how good your eyesight is, and depending on how clear your mind state is, will determine how you see reality. If you are not in a good, but if you're not in a, like, specific mindset, you will see things in a different type of way. If you're in a distorted mindset, you will see things in a distorted way. If your eyes are distorted, if your eye health is distorted, those things become distorted as well. So, that idea. My brother I'm pretty sure both my brothers are still, like, flat earthers. I think my whole family kind of is, to some degree. I don't know, because I've been estranged from them for years, but that's, at least kind of where things were the last time that I interacted with them. My one brother that I grew up with that was always very much into a lot of different, conspiracies and different types of, it wasn't just conspiracies, it's, shit that now has been not just proven to be valid, but, like, it's obvious, but people just didn't ever know, and people all know now, but people never used to know. He's been into this shit forever, but you know, like as far, like he got, you know, as far as, um, you know, with the flat earth theory of being convinced that like essentially we're living in a dome, kind of like it is in the Truman Show, where outer space is a projection, sort of deal. But like, and I remember it was funny because like I didn't really know what to think of the flat earth theory. I didn't want to necessarily believe in it because it just seemed way too out there, and it seemed like everybody that believed in it like wasn't willing to like, weren't really talking to people that like understood those things and learned those things, right? So at the same time, I was dating an astrophysicist, a professor of astrophysics, who like could not stand the fact that I was so uneducated. I'm intelligent enough to understand things, which was impressive for him to a degree, but at the same time almost annoying because he didn't want to have to sit there and teach me everything, right? Especially about like basic physics and shit, which I just didn't know. So that's why I had fallen for some things, but at the same time I kind of took this in-between stance because I just wasn't sure. But what I did know for sure was that it was really crazy to me how many people out of nowhere suddenly believed in the flat earth theory and had all of these different like reasons to believe it and were really convinced of it, and how many people weren't, and how the baseline really came down to the fact that like those that have been educated are like, yeah, that's not how it works, and those that have not been educated are like, that the education system is actually all just lying to us and manipulating us, and that they actually have us in a dome, and that the education system has actually been established just to convince us that we're not living in a dome. And as much as that sounds like some Dale Gribble type bullshit, like, I even tend to believe it, to be honest, to some degree. I mean, my theory and concept of things is a little bit different than the way that it's ever been portrayed, that those types of ways. But like, it's all good. They're good metaphors for you know, the way that I perceive things. At the same time, I also don't fully believe that. I also believe that, like, I mean, in my own experience, education has been everything, and it's how I've learned. Like, it's how I've learned that, you know, so much of everything that I was taught was just complete manipulation and brainwashing. Thank you. So, I don't shit on it, you know. I think that there's something to be said. I swear to God, if you hit me, I'm going to be really frustrated with you. Don't do that. That's so rude. That's so rude. Don't come up here and act like you're going to hit me in the face. Why are you being like this? Stop. Why? I can't. Sorry. I forgot what I was talking about. Yeah, you're very good at that. Great job. Yeah, so the thing is that, like, okay, so it's a matter of, right, there's all these conspiracies, you know, people being like, and I being like that, you know, all of this what's up, NASA's all, the government's all, everything's all just a big illusion, right? And I don't necessarily disagree. But I think it's even, like, bigger than generally, like, conspiracies would make it out to be in a lot of different ways. Or, like, you know, the way that it's generally, like, publicized in any sort of media, including InfoWars and shit like that. You know, that's all just a play of things. But essentially, it wouldn't matter one way or the other, because the way that we receive third dimensional reality is so like tied to our the way that we receive reality is extremely tied to our perception, which is tied to our perspective. But the reality itself, as we know it, is determined by the experience of it. There's something inherently valuable about our experience of, our individual even experience of reality. We analyze the experience that other life forms have of reality, but we cannot ourselves perfectly gauge what reality is for others. That's a really cool way that AI is actually giving us the capacity to use, VR to simulate animal and insect perspectives. Incredible. At the same time, I think that even hallucinogens for thousands of years have done that for people that were truly seeking the right information. And I think that we've just become so far removed from the right information that it's taken us opening portals to damnation to be able to get to the point of being able to be like, oh, maybe this is actually the way that things should be. So it doesn't matter, flat earth or not, it doesn't matter, because the way that we are receiving reality is like, whether we're in a dome, like, okay, so like what the flat earthers are talking about is like, there's the surface of the earth, right? And they're thinking of it like a sphere, but that's just like the eyeball. The surface of the earth in which we're looking out is like the pupil. And it's where the light is being received. It's being received through us. But truly, there's this deeper perception, and it's the way that we choose to receive our reality. And that's kind of the concaveness of the light being received back in through the lens into the, like where the cones and everything are, right? And then being able to be projected back. That is what's happening in reality to experience through our consciousness and our subconsciousness. And the differentiation between the two, at least as far as I've conceived, is bias. So the capacity to be able to remove bias is the capacity to be able to harness a sort of keenness to one's own subconscious along with one's consciousness, and thus to be able to kind of interpret more seamlessly, truly, well, you can add your own filters over time and your own biases over time through experience that may be more accurate and helpful. But I think it's important to always have quite flexible biases. And, no, don't do that. Don't do that. I didn't listen. Sir. You're... Yeah, well, don't do it. You know, like we have the divine feminine and divine masculine represented here, and as I'm talking about biases, I don't know, that sounds weird, but biases, it goes into that. There's an idea of, there's this innate bias that's determined by the fact that one thing is either going through the consciousness or the subconscious. But it can be both too. It's this argument that I had with this guy that I had a crush on. We were arguing about what is subjective and what is objective. But my argument, like, he was like, just couldn't understand how I didn't understand the difference between the two. But my confusion was because sometimes people will act as if something is so objective when, in my personal opinion, it's truly subjective. And that's generally my argument, but they'll act like it's an illogical argument because they've already predetermined that the thing is objective. And they're like, it's objective. And it's like, I'm not arguing that it's not objective. I'm just arguing that it's also subjective. And they just won't give that space. And he was willing to. But, like, that's always been a very big thing for me. And that happens a lot where it's like, you know, having the divine feminine doesn't mean that you're a woman. It also isn't inherently even referring to what is socially determined to be femininity, even in its highest degree. The same goes for masculinity. But it is in reference to what is innate within nature, which is crazy, the crazy thing about nature, because our general concepts of gender are not so innate. Those things tend to flex and fold all throughout these different ways, all throughout nature, you know, in ways that just, so, you know, it's hard to determine exactly what that is on a tangible level. You know, we're talking about something more energetic, despite the fact that we're coming out of this delusional mindset of like, oh, I need a savior, you know, I need these things to cope, or I need this status in order to feel some type of way, or, you know, I need to claim this type of lifestyle or this type of, you know, like people need to receive me the certain type of way. Like there's a certain idea of like being almost like dogmatic to some degree, and ridding oneself of those things, being so, what else would be the word? It was just on the tip of my tongue. Fundamentalist. Being so fundamentalistic that you become shallow, you know, and like, that's not the point. The point isn't to obey the law, but to fulfill it. And if you don't know what that means, like, that's part of the point of going deeper in order to understand those concepts. You know, that's the point of the Tao, is to be able to open oneself to be able to understand these deeper concepts. And so that we're talking about being able to, like I said, bring oneself into a state of being able to be vulnerable at the same time as being empowered. Being able to receive opportunity at the same time that one's like grabbing that bull by the horns and taking full advantage, right? Because that's what it looks like. It isn't just receiving the bull by the horns, like, well, okay, so now it can kill me. Like, no, it's taking that bull by the horns and then like riding it and training it, you know, and coming into an alignment, like, despite certain things. You know, it's something that I was talking to myself about, and then like had kind of made a little bit of a post about, and I don't think I even shared the other thing I wrote about it, but the idea that like every single thing that has ever happened is a blessing and a gift and a tool for our betterment. And I truly believe that in my own life. I believe that. I will not give power to anything else. There's nothing that's going to take my power from me that way. Like, I have the power to be able to make good of anything that is given. Anything that I can receive well. And, you know, it's taken a really long time to cultivate that. But what's so crazy about that is that, like, at the same exact time, like, all that I've cultivated is just a capacity to be able to, like, let go of my ego and just, like, receive openly from the universe the abundance that it has for me at any given time. You know, and, like, that's for all of us. Like, that isn't like I'm so special. Like, God doesn't have favorites that way. Like, we're all God. We all have, you know, this power. We all have this capacity, but there is a very specific process that we all must follow in order to be able to inherit these gifts. That's the point of any prophet, of any teacher, of any, any of these gurus or guides or any of this, like, the sages and all of that. Like, the point is not to force a horse to drink, but to lead it to water, right? The point is to be able to just show you that it's possible, and to make that space so that you can see how it is. And like, it's very important for me to share of myself, only because, like, in my life, in my experience, I've met people that are like me in many different ways, but I've never met anybody that's quite like me, like exactly like me. Like, I've met people that I relate to in tons of different ways, but like, there's always differences too, where like we're just not like each other at all. So like, anybody that's exactly like me, like, I am well aware that, like, I'm my own person. Now, I believe that to be true of everyone. I believe that to be true of everyone. It's literally just physics. It's just the math of things. I was born at the time and place that I was, and nobody else was born out of my mom's vagina at the same time that I was. It's literally physically impossible. Even a twin would be born moments before or moments afterwards, unless we got squeezed out at the same time. And even if we got squeezed out at the same time, one of us got squeezed out on top of the other or on the side of the other. So we're always experiencing reality inches apart, slightly different. Even if we were Siamese twins and shared part of the same brain, we're still receiving reality within inches of difference. There's still a difference, though. We're still receiving it differently. There's still a capacity for any number of variation of experiences through any other life form, for the fact that it's something separate, and it always will be. That's what's so crazy about life, but it's the cultivation of all of those things that allows the space for God to exist, and God exists in all things that way. So there's this idea of stepping into God, stepping into Godhead, of whatever that looks like to a person, being able to understand that, like, that means that even the aspects of yourself that you have damned prior, that you have considered to be lesser than, like, every single thing that you've ever experienced, every single aspect of who you are, every single quality that you have is specifically for you to do the very most with, the very best with, the very goodest things with, the very just most genuine things that you can. Not even the best, not even the goodest, not even the most righteous. We're not talking about levels of morality. We're talking about levels of genuineness, the levels of honesty, integrity, and just being true to oneself and letting those things speak. Because God speaks through those things. God isn't speaking through the person that's trying to convince you of some message. God is speaking through the words that spark you into something in a way where it's like, wow, I already knew this, but I almost feel like I forgot, now I remember, right? It's not like forcing the words into you. It's like pulling them out of you without you knowing that they were even there, sort of deal. Like, I was just getting a visual of that part in the Matrix where, like, she like pretty much assaults him, but like ends up like sucking the slug out of his stomach, and he's like, that wasn't a dream. Nope. And like, letting things be weird. It's okay if things are weird. Let things be as weird as, the world is weird now. We literally have scientists like getting paid lots of money to be like, we're opening portals to other dimensions. We don't know exactly what we're doing, but we're pretty sure we're interacting with demons. Like, weird as shit. Like, the world is weird as shit. Let it be weird. Let it be weird. There's a balance, but it's not gonna come in the world. And that's the issue, is that everybody's like waiting on peace on earth, and for everybody to be balanced, and everybody's waiting for everybody else to be balanced and to be at peace and to love each other and to be true to themselves before they do it for themselves. That's not how it works. We literally just need to come into it on our own individual, and once we do that as individuals, the whole world will change. But it literally takes doing it in an individual capacity. You cannot be looking externally, you have to be looking inwardly, because that's where these changes happen. That's where, because it's all, like I said, it's a matter of perception, which is based on perspective. But perspective is really a matter of perception as well. You know, just like that argument of subjective and objective. So, I don't really know exactly who this was for, but hopefully that I don't know, I feel like I don't know exactly what I've been talking about this whole time, and it feels like this is resonating for somebody specifically, whoever's listening at whatever point in time. This may or may not be resonating with you specifically, like on or off, maybe some things do, some things don't, but there's one person in specific who, like, this really has been resonating for, and they're almost like waiting for like one more like specific something, or they have like a question in their heart that they're just like looking for an answer for. And maybe it's like there's like a movement that they're looking like, should I do this thing? Like, is this what I should do? But like, if they know very specifically like what it is that they want to do, they're just always questioning it. And like every time they think about it, they're like, never mind. Like, I'm just not going to do that. When I'm saying this, like, you know what I'm talking about. I don't know, but you know. And if you know, and if that's you, like, do the thing, do it assertively, do it with confidence, do it knowing that you have the power, do it with your passion, do it with passion, do it with truth, do it with a sense of integrity, with a sense of honesty, like just being as raw and as true as you are, naked, gentle, but like calm, be yourself. Be completely yourself. Be calm being yourself. Be free with your emotions. Be free with your body, with your language, with your heart, with your mind. Just kind of let things flow and just trust those things. Let it kind of be like a symphony where like there's going to be parts where like there's, you know, different things going on that work together, different things that all of a sudden stop, that pick up. Just let things work together and see it as a bigger picture and kind of move out and let these things, maybe take it slow, maybe become very precise, like lay out an idea, set a plan, have specific steps, and then kind of, you may end up setting it up and then trying to follow through and completely just like forgetting everything that you planned and just kind of winging it. But that's fine. The energy that you're putting into kind of establishing this thing or like planning it or doing whatever, like it's not that your plan is going to get followed through, but setting up this plan and then following through yourself as much as possible allows you to be in the right space energetically to receive what it is that the universe is trying to have for you to receive for this next whatever is going to happen next in our lives. Okay. That's the message that I have. I hope that it resonates. I hope that it helps. I hope that you are good, and I will see you soon in the next one. Oh, and wait. Hold on. Yeah, just don't add to fear. Don't be anxious. Don't worry about things. Don't spend time sitting in that energy. If you find yourself in that energy, take some time to meditate. Get outside. Take a walk. Just find silly ways to distract yourself. Listen to some music. Sing some music. Dance. Do something. But don't let yourself sit in any anxious energy. Just kind of go with the flow. Don't feel like you have to say everything right now, right away, or explain everything. Don't feel like you ever have to explain everything, but ultimately, you know, just embrace, you know, whatever Um, whatever makes you feel the most grounded, and move from that space. Like I said, patiently, and just trust and know that things are going to work out in your favor. All right, and thanks for listening. Hope this is beneficial. I hope that you stay well, that you bless others as you are blessed by others, that you bless others whether or not you are blessed by others, but that you start to find ways to be grateful and to realize that you are always blessed because you are. I appreciate you. Thanks for the time and energy that you've taken to listen, and I will see you again in the next one.